We're tackling all the big questions here, and every guest has
Yep.
to actually complete this sentence. Life is ...
We were just about on that, weren't we?
Oh, we were getting close.
We
were getting close.
Life is, the first words that come to mind is life is a process of discovery. And every time you think you've discovered who you are, the next level of the process begins, and life is a never-ending process of discovery, I would say.
Ain't that the truth?
No one tells you what you're supposed to do. Where we're going or what you're doing's up to me.
Trevor Hendy is a man of the water, a waterman, proud father of 4. One of his sons, TJ, is following his path. Trevor won 6 Ironman titles. He also had to stare down the destructive trappings of success. My great friend, Trevor Hendy, how are you, mate?
My brother, Scotty, how are you, mate? We haven't done this before, have we? Of all the things we've done, we haven't actually podcasted together.
That's good. You can teach an old dog new tricks.
There you go.
Mate, I'm going to start with the most important news. I loved hearing this, that Trevor Hendy is about to become a grandfather. How do you feel about that? Because I know how much family means to you, obviously.
Ooh. Yeah, a little overwhelmed, I think, mate. Deeply moved by the whole thing. A little uncertain, never been a grandfather before. So every time you do something new, there's always that feeling of something new. But also, I think, as you know, I deeply value life so much that I don't take it for granted. So as, my daughter Christelle, my first child of 4, she's 31 now, and she's about 5 or 6 weeks away because it's identical twin boys that are on their way. So we're about to get this little brood of amazing little boys, and we actually all live in one big house together. They get their own area here, and so it's not just being a grandfather to my grandkids down the road. They're going to be downstairs in their own little area. So it actually really moved me, mate. And at Christmas time, we get together, and we always, when we have birthdays and Christmases as a family, we sit around and often someone will just throw out a question, about, hey, everybody share about this, and it's often, if it's your birthday, everyone talks about the person that's their birthday and say what I love about you and a funny memory I've got. And at Christmas, I was sort of sitting there and I went, oh, hey guys, what do you want to leave behind in 2019 and take into 2020? What are you most looking forward to? And we just went around the whole table of the big extended family. And it got to me, and I asked the question, it got to me, and I burst into tears. And I was like, what? And I realised that I was so nervous, tense at a really deep level about being a good enough grandfather.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of talk about what do you want to call yourself? And you don't want to be granddad or pa or poppy because you seem too old, And for me, I was like, straight away, it took me a while. And then I was like, you know what? No, I'm pa, just like my dad was. I'm pa, I don't mind, I'm ready. I'm ready to be older, and I'm ready to be a grandfather. So long answer to your question, but I feel pretty blown away by the idea, and it's been so beautiful having Christelle and Sam here with us to go through the whole process together and help them prepare the room and all that sort of stuff. So I'm pretty blown away, mate, and a little nervous, but like almost emotional, just constantly like, wow, it's just sitting below the surface that I'm going to be a mess when I see them for the first time. And, oh my God.
I think it's fantastic. I can, 2 things out of that. One, I can absolutely picture you sitting around being a blubbering mess around that, in that conversation.
Right.
But also, I'm just picturing Trevor Hendy's created his own village, an amazing group of people.
You know what else? My dad, so my sister, who's my only brother or sister, she has identical twin boys. And it just occurred to me this morning that of all the things that I'm living in my father's footsteps, now I'm about to be a grandfather to twin boys of my daughter, which is exactly what my father did, grandfather to twin boys from his daughter. Like, oh my God, I just keep following in his footsteps, doing so many similar things. So not only the village, but just the idea that family keeps going through repeat cycles. And, it's just it's an amazing thing, isn't it, what you learn from family? It's pretty incredible.
Phenomenal time. Congratulations.
Thanks, mate.
I can't start this conversation with Trevor Hendy without talking about your affinity with the water. You and I have done a lot of trekking together, different countries, different places. No matter what type of water it is, freezing cold water in Tassie, in New Zealand, the coldest, ice-laden stream of all time. You are in the water always. Where does it come from? Where is that? Where has that affinity with water? Where was that born for you?
I was born in Melbourne, and my mum and dad were born there as well. And apparently I used to go to the ocean and be scared of it when I was really young. And I think I had really bad croup or something. I had some sort of weird thing. I could hardly breathe. And the doctor said, take him to the ocean. So they drove down to Portsea.
Yep.
Got me out on the cliff, and the wind hit off the ocean of the cliff. And I went, ah! And took this breath and cleared it once and for all, And when I was really, really young, my mum said, we just have this memory of you standing there and feeling the sea breeze and just like you were properly breathing for the first time. And funnily enough, years later, Portsea was the, site of so many great race victories and everything else. And so it didn't come from a family lineage connected to it. They weren't water babies. It didn't come from growing up around it. I travelled around Australia for 2 years, learned to swim in the Daly River in Northern Territory, which you wouldn't do anymore, with crocodiles, and settled on the Gold Coast when I was 5. So I wasn't born around it, but I grew up, I suppose, around it. Joined the Nippers when I was 8, was really scared. And then I don't know, I think the only way I would say it is that I think my father, when he answered the call to leave Melbourne and go somewhere, he felt the call to take his kids to somewhere different. And we settled on the Gold Coast, and I feel like he was being intuitively guided, because magic happened when I connected with the water. And it's another thing, like talking about being about to be a grandfather with twin boys. It's like, it's overwhelming when I think about it. I love the ocean. I love the ocean. It's like a family member to me, And I've had so many incredible experiences. I've spent, and not a story that I've shared a lot, but I often share with the kids, because kids can believe it and adults can't. But I spent the best part of 45 minutes on the back of a whale, and every time I tried to climb off it, it would change direction, come over and pick me back up again, I had dolphins making love in circles around me next to my buddy going, what's going on? I've had that happen a couple of times. And I'm at home in the water, and it's a bit of an airy, fairy, weird spiritual thing to say, but I once had a healer that was living with me, and he was an amazing man, and he was in between houses and states and stuff, and he ended up with me for about 6 months. He came in for a week and ended up for about 6 months. It was such a beautiful moment in my life, but one day I came home and I went into his room, and he had a magazine, like a healing magazine. On the back page of the magazine, there was this picture of this planet. And I was like, I was just staring at this planet. And he walked in, he goes, what do you think when you look at that? And I'm like, that's where I'm from. It was the weirdest thing. I'd never had any idea that I was from anywhere else other than, always had a spiritual feeling, but not a I'm from somewhere else feeling. And I went, what's that? And he goes, that's Sirius. That's the Sirius star system. And that's where all the dolphins and whale beings and all that reportedly come from. I'm like, that's my home. So a really airy, fairy, weird, out there on the edge answer, which I never would have gone anywhere near once upon a time. But I have such an affinity with all the creatures in the water, and I surf, I fish, I swim, I don't know. I can't even explain it. But can I give you a moment that it really hit home?
I want you to imagine that one of those grandkids that are not too far away is sitting on your lap, and they're actually asking you for that moment. So, grandfather Trevor, how do you explain your closeness with the water?
Well, obviously, I'll tell them the story about the whale, and I'll tell them dolphin stories, and there's albino dolphin stories and albino whales, white whale stories, and amazing moments. But there's probably 2 that really shine out. I had some great victories and things where the ocean I kind of felt like I was at one with it. And I would swim in and I could feel that I didn't even have to look at the wave. I could feel the wave pick me up. So they're really cool. But probably winning an Australian board rescue with my son, TJ, my oldest son, and the affinity we shared on that day is the story that I'll tell the grandkids, and I can show them the video, But there's one, it's not that big a deal, but it was a really big deal for me. And it was one day after, and I think you and I were working closely together. I think it was around about when we were just getting LifeChanger fired up. And we were traveling around and meeting a lot of people, and everywhere we went, we had that serendipity of people, the conversations. I was just thinking about this, and people would burst into tears and go, I was just thinking about exactly that, and my childhood, and we had that incredible 6 months of serendipity when we were starting. And obviously it continues on all the time for us. It's a beautiful thing. But right about that stage, I was really pondering, what's it all mean, and what's life all about, and what is my greater purpose? And, I'm discovering some really cool things, but how do I pass it on? And one day I walked down the beach. This is only a few years ago, right? Three years ago. And I walked down the beach, and I was standing there, and it was windy, choppy, bumpy. And I looked out the back, and there was a sandbank way out the back, shallow, late in the afternoon. And I swam out to it. I just swam out to the sandbank. There was no one on the beach. It wasn't one of those days that felt like a good day on the beach. And I swam out to it. I stood there, and I had this overwhelming feeling of being loved, of like, the breeze was hitting me on the face, and I felt so loved and so connected to the ocean. I'm so far out to sea, on my own, no one anywhere, crappy day in the water, but it felt so beautiful and so perfect, and the breeze was hitting my face. And all of a sudden I started crying. I started going, but happy, just going, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? And I had this flashback. And I had it was like a deck of cards, like one moment, and then a whole bunch of, as the deck opened up, a whole bunch of moments. Before I would go racing, I would swim out the back on my own, and I would stand there and face away from the crowd and face away from everybody else. And I never remembered it. But I didn't realize how many times I would stand there and a breeze would touch me on the face, and I would feel so loved. And the ocean would say, it's all right, just connect with me today. And I just have this feeling of just letting go. It was nothing to do with the competition or a race or anything else. And I'd swim back in, and people would be warming their arms up and getting all nervous and pacing and everything else. And I'd just be standing there super still, and I realized in this moment many, many years later, and the exact words in my mind was, the ocean, she always loved me. It didn't matter. I had a relationship with her. That's how it felt. And of all the great relationships, she always greeted me exactly how I was, and I feel emotional when I say that, because I felt unconditionally loved by the ocean. I don't know why or how or what, ultimately where it came from, but then magic would happen. As soon as I would let it in, I wasn't in the race anymore. Everyone else was racing, and I'd be in the flow. And people would say, I used to say, my nickname was Dial a Wave. They'd say, dialed a wave from someone above, And I didn't understand at the time, but later I couldn't intellectually explain it, but energetically I could say I was just in love with her, and she would give me back everything that I was giving her. So that's my one moment. It's only about 3 years ago where it all made sense all of a sudden.
It's interesting the way that you talk about that. We would say now it's about being present or being mindful.
Yeah.
And so many athletes find solace in their sport. For you, it's obviously being in the water. For others, it might have been the solace of, being immersed in front of an 80,000 capacity crowd. But that is a safe place for athletes where they feel really connected. And when they feel that level of, they feel that level of connection, often that sense of flow and oneness with your sport really does flow
I've
from
seen
it.
I've seen you in the midfield, right? And, we connected, and there's a long story back behind how we connected and how connected we already felt. But I've seen shots of you. I remember a shot of you bursting out of the pack playing for the Sydney Swans, in Sydney. And I don't even know how good a year it was for you, but I just remember going, wow, because you're in the moment, nothing else exists, and you know exactly where the ball's going to bounce in that moment, and you're running that way at full pace, and the ball takes a left turn and just hits you on the chest, and then boom, out you go. And it looks superhuman, but it's not superhuman. It's actually every single human's got it. It's the human being super, but it's such an amazing thing. And I think that's where sport's so incredible, like art and music, and it takes you out of the logical world and takes you into the moment. So I'm glad we get to share those every now and then.
100%. It's one of the rare feelings that you get when you're in any sort of sport. Reflecting on some of, I guess, your moments, but I want to now get you to reflect on TJ. So TJ, your son, going through, well, he's now a successful Ironman in his own right, Nutrigrain Ironman. Talk us through just the challenges of that, father to son, following a similar pathway. You know, you're not a normal Ironman, Trevor. You're an Australian Hall of Fame 6-time Ironman, and the pressures that would bring. What was that experience like for you as a dad?
I'll give you a 20-second rapid fire of the progression. The day TJ was born, his big brown eyes stared back at me, and I realised how off track I was as a man. You know, I just felt out of integrity with myself. I wasn't the guy that I wanted to be. I'd lost myself in the fame and lost myself in all the distractions and everything else. So Christelle came first 7 years before, and she gave me the love, the unconditional love, this beautiful daughter. TJ came 7 years later and said, now what have you been doing with that? You know, like, what have you used that power for? You know, and it was like a biggest wake-up call. And I remember holding him going, I want to be the man that deserves to hold this boy. And that's led to the board rescue 20 years later, where we won it together, and it was the most amazing moment. So in the midst of all that, this intuitive young boy would grow up, and he just would see things happening before they happened. He was such a gift. He was so gentle. He was so beautiful, so powerful, and very athletic and sporty. But what I loved about him was he'd never grab onto any one thing and hold onto it very long. And he was scared. He went to Nippers. He felt the competition thing and went, nah. Trevor Hendy's son, I'm not having a bar of that, because everybody looked at him at Nippers and he could feel it. It was like, this doesn't feel good. Everyone's watching.
So how did it move from there? Did he approach you? Did he come back to you and actually say, hey, Dad, you know what? I think this is something I want to pursue now. How did that, because it's a delicate position to be a father to be in. You can never force anyone to do anything, but you know, there's probably part of you that goes, yeah, I'd love him to go down that pathway. But also there might be a part that says, you know, go and do something completely different and I'll support you. So I'm interested in what that initial conversation was like.
I think he went away from Nippers very quickly. He won his races at the club, then went to the carnival, led out to the first can, got caught on the can, tucked on the inside. When he came in, I think Jackie and I at the time were going, oh, just let him be. You know, one was saying, let him be. The other one was saying, no, he needs to concentrate more or something like that. He was like, bugger this, you know. The opinions of how you deal with this and all that sort of stuff kind of hit him pretty early. And he was like, I don't want to have a bar of this, you know.
Yeah.
So he went away from it. And, you know, funnily enough, I reckon 50% of me would have loved him to pursue it, and 50% of me would have loved him not to pursue it. And so each of those felt like 100, because when I was in that one, I was like, oh, that'd be great. When I was in the other one, I was like, no, this is fantastic. He's not doing it.
Yeah.
And if we go back to the affinity for the water, I think if you could use a strange viewpoint and say that we all choose our parents, right? And just say we choose the parents that's perfect to learn from. I reckon TJ would have looked down and gone, oh, the water. Okay, he's a bit of a wanker as well. He needs a bit of help. You know, he'll grow up and he'll learn. You know, he'll be probably a bit more humble by the time I get there, and I'll help him, you know. It's perfect for me to groom. Yeah. He turned up, I was still a canvas, very much painting, you know, learning how to be myself and learning that some of the things that I thought were me, that the competitor and all that weren't really. It was like the way I learned how to cope. And so when he did go away, it was fantastic, because guess where he went away to? The water. He surfed, he swam, he dived, he body surfed. He did all that sort of stuff and became really good in the water. And then I would go training. I'd go, not training me, I'd go and help the coach at Surfers Paradise, Zane, who you've met, and who just has raised a terrific squad off the back of all this time. And I would go there and work out with the squad. And I'd say, Teach, come up and have a surf. And he'd ride the surfboard and finish. He'd be bored, be waiting on the beach, and we'd do the last couple of swims. And he'd come in and join in with me and Shannon Eckstein and somebody else. And he'd hold the body wave all the way to the beach and then beat us in the run up the beach. And he'd be like, hang on a second, I'm actually pretty good at this, you know. So he connected via the ocean first. Yeah. So his real reason is the ocean. And secondary reason is he loves to be free around the ocean and be fast in it. So even just now with the shutdown that we've been going through and everything else, he's been saying to me, Dad, we're meant to be at Australian Championships this week. You know, he's like, I'm loving surfing and paddling and fishing and doing all the things that he grew up doing. So he connected with the ocean, then came back, and he came to me one day and he said, it was in year 11, late in year 11, so he's 16 and a half. And he said, Dad, I've worked out what I want to do for a career. And I had this like little heart start moment of, oh, okay, here we go. He's in year 11. He must have been chatting to the guidance. Yeah, buckle up. The guidance counselor or something. And I said, okay. And he said, I want to follow in your footsteps. I want to be an Ironman.
What was your reaction? Immediate reaction?
Oh my God. It was the 50-50. It became obvious that there was two of me or two parts of me in that moment. I could feel both of them fully. I could feel half of me that was like, oh my God, that would be so amazing. Why? Because I could share the journey with him. Because I've done it. I know it, So even the part of me that wanted him to do it, I wanted him to do it because I love him, and we could relate together through that. We could connect. Everything that, if there is any value in what I've learned, I could give it to you, So it made me feel good enough as a father to say, I could help you with that.
I got something to offer.
You could come to me and ask me questions and I could answer them, And later on I learned I could actually not answer them. I could be present while you answered them for yourself, because my answer is not the important one. But the other 50% of me went, oh, crap, are you sure? Because I knew how heartbreaking it is, how there's no promises, no guarantees. You can be very talented. And it hurts. The journey hurts the whole time.
Yeah.
You get wonder and joy and breakthroughs. And we're always up when you're an athlete. You're up in that positive, proactive space. And you're like, yeah, and you're bouncing around. Your chest is up and you're inflated. But under that, it's just tumultuous. And it's a really hard journey, and it's heartbreaking. It's a hard grind. So part of me went, oh, I could swear here, but I won't. But, oh, you're serious? Like, really? And the other part went, yeah. And I realized, they're the two parts of my journey. And I said, how have you come to this? And he said, I'd love to have that lifestyle. I'd love to follow in your footsteps. I realized when me and Shannon had that body surfing contest that I can do it, and I'm like, well, it's a lot more to it than that one, body surfing. And I went, is that what you want to do? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, how do you want to start? And he goes, and literally 16 and a half, I taught him how to board paddle and taught him how to ski paddle in the river. He's sitting on the ski wobbling like this. Everyone else that he was about to race against had been doing it since they were kids.
Yeah.
He started from so far behind, but I suppose a little bit like the bow and arrow, when the further back you pull it, the faster it pulls out. And he'd loved the water. He'd loved the freedom of the water and the connection of the water. And he surfed for competition as well, but he'd never actually let himself explore how fast or how bold he could be. And as soon as he let that go, he came out of it like a, bull at a gate. And it's 5 years later, he won his first Kellogg's Nutri-Grain race, professional race on TV, and just was like so blown away that he was like, I did it, and every step between there and then was heartbreak, inspiration, motivation, hope, heartbreak, hope, possibility. So, man, I'm just so proud of him and the boy that he is, the man that he is, the human that he is. But he's a really elite level athlete now, and he's now right in that top 5, top 10, and he probably really would have had a crack at Aussie title victory this year. He's right in the ballpark, led the last couple of races of the season before we went into shutdown. And he said to me, I'm so glad it didn't happen, because after 7 years of full on from the moment I decided I needed a break. And guess what he's done? He's just gone back to the ocean and he's surfed and he's played and he said, oh, Dad, I want to ride every craft there is.
I love hearing the pride in your voice when you talk about now his journey. It's certainly, I think it's one of the highs of your career, the way that you actually reflect on that. There's lots of highs. And you've been a
part of it, the last 3 years that we spent a lot of time together, it's been a big part of it. We've been best mates and really close over that period of time. And I'm watching your boys, Seb, a couple of years behind, a few years behind coming into it. And I can see all of the same stuff. And that's what I love about life, is that we're all going through the same stuff, And if we can give each other a little heads up, we've all got to do it our own way. But that's what I love. We're all sharing in the journey.
Yeah, I agree. Lots of highs throughout your career, Trev. But as with everyone, there's also challenges along the way. Just to paint the picture for people who may not be familiar with your career, the one or two people in Australia, wherever they are, you were a surf god. There were 6 Ironman titles. It was iconic what you were doing in so many different ways. But there were challenges that came with that. There were the trappings of success, some destructive elements that started to appear, around you. How challenging was that whole time, and what did you learn out of, I guess, some of the downside to being the greatest Ironman that Australia had ever produced at that time?
I was going to say before, that when TJ came along, it got me to view the whole thing freshly from what is real and what is ego, and a wonderful teaching that I know you and I have talked about and we pass on as best we can, but that was given to me a long time ago, is the front cover and the back cover. That when we're young, we develop a lot of fears and a lot of worries and a lot of like, am I good enough? And that sits in our back cover. You don't show it to people, but it sits back behind who you are. It's like psychologically hidden. It's in our subconscious. And in my back cover, I had a lot of, I'm not good enough. I'm skinny. I'm freckly. I'm not attractive. I'm not funny. I'm not popular. I'm not, I haven't got anything going for me. That was my childhood, not because of not growing up in a close family, which I did, or not growing up with terrible problems. There was always the alpha male and the bullying stuff that went on in schools and surf clubs and sporting clubs and all that. But I felt intimidated by life. I just didn't feel good enough by life. And part of me, I falsely assumed that I saw my father as a god. He had the beautiful wife and the two beautiful kids that, he adored, and everything he did to me was like a god. So somehow I wanted to live up to that. And in my mind, I was small and he was big. And so my back cover, I wasn't big enough, wasn't good enough, wasn't all that sort of stuff. And then I hung around the ocean and people for long enough and formulated a bit of a thing in my mind that I could be good at this, just like TJ. I could do this, And then I decided, it seemed that the winner got the girl, and the winner got the spoils, and the winner got the laughs, the winner got left alone. The winner didn't get bullied, that's for sure, and he certainly called the shots. He almost was the Pied Piper. Everybody would follow him around. And so in my subconscious mind, I kind of slowly, I didn't know it at the time, but I clearly recognized it later, that I built up a bit of a picture that appears to me that, at one stage I wanted to be an accountant, but they didn't seem to be getting the girl, and all the spoils. It was like, hang on, the surf god got him. The good surfer or the board paddling champion or the Ironman champion got it. Oh, and that's only just a stone's throw from where I am, because I can start as good as them and finish as good as them. If I got fitter or stronger, maybe I could be that guy. I could be the guy, And subconsciously, subliminally, I got to a point where I went, that's it. Kind of effort, that's me. I'm going to do this. And I bit the bullet. And then I got faster and stronger and won everything. And I just said, for people who don't know my career, I won, and then the Uncle Toby series started. We went on national television live. We had a World Ocean Man series. We had a couple of million people watching at once. We were a summer sport. We weren't in the winter with you, so we didn't compete against football. We're only against golf, tennis, cricket. So a lot of the men and women wanted to watch the Ironman because it really appealed, Probably the same men and women that were watching Ironman were watching football, very similar in the aesthetics of the way you had to move and be free and fast and everything else and deal with different circumstances. And in the end, went on Baywatch and did an episode on that, and met Madonna and met Michael Jackson and hung out with the crazy, amazing people. And so if you remember the back cover that I talked about, I'm not good enough. Now in the front cover, I'm a king or a god, or, like getting all these things thrown at my feet. And the easiest way I can explain it was neither of those were me. It's not true that I wasn't good enough, and it's not true that I was bulletproof. It's not true that I was hopeless, and it's not true that I was amazing. Actually, everybody's amazing, like if we can tap into it. So that mind-made projection of now I don't have to feel crap. I can feel amazing. While I got to the top of the scale and experienced what it felt like to be that shooting star on the top, I carried every bit of the pain with me, and it was still unresolved. And when my marriage broke up, and when I became bankrupt, and when my body started to collapse and fall apart, something's got to give. And when my mental state became shaky again and the circle completed, I'm like, hang on a second, I'm not a winner anymore. I'm back to feeling like a loser. That was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I didn't get my sense of who I am from being an Ironman. I got my sense of who I am from realizing I'm not.
Yeah.
But from realizing but the love for the ocean and love for my mates. You know, if we had connected through that period of time, we would have partied and hung out together. And when all the journey finished, we still would have been best mates, because it was actually the friendships and the mateships and the love and the connection and the ocean was the real part of the journey. But the idea that I was something great was just the illusion that I found. I could tap into great things at the time. And the cool thing was anyone can. The idea that I can do it and no one else can, that's the illusion. But the idea that everybody can, that's what I realised. And mate, I tell you what, I healed so much stuff, including that first relationship, the second major relationship, and the relationship with my kids and my body and myself. And I don't know, life just, I felt like it started when I stopped thinking I was an Ironman. I started realising I was, you know, a lover, not a fighter.
There's an amazing an analogy that I often reflect on. It's about the analogy is you're walking through a storm, and ultimately the more that the storm actually strips away from you, the closer you get to actually realising who you really are and where your real power is. So for athletes in particular, I think losing that identity as an athlete at some point, whilst as challenging as that is and as daunting as that is, because athletes have looked at themselves through that lens from, you know, sometimes 6 or 7 years of age. And all of a sudden for that to be taken away, that referencing on that framework, then it's like, well, okay, who am I? And that's a really tough journey to walk through for an athlete. But when they do walk through it, they often come out of it. And look, I've been through my own version of that as a player and a coach. It really consolidates, well, you know what, this is actually who I am. And it's not the title. It's not the six Ironmans or whatever it might be. It's much bigger than that. And I've been really privileged to get to know you on that level, Trev. You've got to answer this question.
I've got one thing for you really quickly. Is it I just heard this the other day. You know, we get lost in the idea of greatness, but it's not just us looking through that lens, that everybody that goes on the journey with us, because life sees greatness, you know, the planet has seen greatness the wrong way for a while. You know, it's like power and greatness and money and possessions and titles and, you know, all those sort of things. So when we're looking through that and we're lost looking through that lens, we don't realise that the whole world's looking through it with us, going, so when you prop yourself up to there, everyone else goes, you're great, because that's how we see greatness. Yeah. But I just read the other day, someone said, you know, now there's athletes getting paid $1 million a month still doing nothing, you know, and there's nurses getting paid $55,000 a year that are saving lives right now. So what is greatness? You know, that simple, humble nurse, and there's hundreds of thousands of doctors and people that are actually going out helping someone down the street at the moment when all this isolation's going on. Isn't that greatness? You know, that's actually where the real power is. And that's what I get, is that winning and experiencing that is the best thing. It's so much fun. It's so amazing. Sure. But if I only experienced that, I'd feel like I'd missed out on everything, because I had to realise, as equally as not relevant as is relevant, you know, that's what I love. I love realising that, I can have all that and I can let it all go too, because I get more fun out of just you and I walking down the beach and having a surf together and sharing a look on kids' faces from that last workshop that we did. Yep. That's every bit as powerful as any race ever won. Oh, without doubt. We're tackling all the big questions here, and every guest has to actually complete this sentence. Life is ... We were just about on that, weren't we? We were getting close. We were getting close. Life is, you know, the first words that come to mind is life is a process of discovery. And every time you think you've discovered who you are, the next process, the next level of the process begins, you know. And life is a never-ending process of discovery, I would say. Ain't that the truth? Trevor Hendy, you are an open-hearted, great brother of mine. It's been a privilege to have you on the show. Thanks, congratulations on a life well lived. Thank you very much, Scotty. Please remember, if you're ever in need of support, reach out to Lifeline or Beyond Blue. For more insight sessions, you can find us on all of the social platforms or at lifechanger.org.au. Thanks for joining us, and here's to a life well lived. I don't think I believe, no.